They always told us space was empty, vast, silent, endless. But space holds secrets far older than our civilization. And tonight, I've seen what hides in the shadows beyond the stars. My name is Commander Alex Rourke, lead specialist for Deep Space Recon Unit 9. They sent us here to the edge of the Andromeda Rift because we intercepted something. It wasn't a signal, not in the way you think. No, it was a pulse. A gravitational tremor like space itself whispered. Coordinates encrypted inside the distortion. And when we traced it, we found this. An abandoned base orbiting a dead moon. No transponder. No registration. Not human, not entirely alien either. We docked cautiously, our ship's systems glitching with every second we got closer. The structure looked ancient, but somehow alive, humming beneath the silence. The halls were empty. No bodies. No signs of struggle. Only the hum of unseen machines. And symbols etched into the walls, flowing, shifting. Like they're reading us as much as we read them. We thought we were alone. We weren't. Motion sensors picked up faint life signs, but nothing we recognized. First, it was shadows moving where shadows shouldn't. Then, the whispers started. Not through the air, but inside our skulls. Thoughts, not our own, creeping into the edges of our minds. Dr. Chen, our xenolinguist, began decoding the markings. She said they told a story, not written in words, but intentions. This wasn't just a base. It was a vault. A forgotten relic from a species that came long before humans ever looked to the stars. And the worst part? It wasn't abandoned. Deep inside, we found stasis pods, thousands of them. Inside beings. Tall. Featureless. Suspended in a frozen moment of time. But their eyes, even in sleep, they followed us. Then the systems woke up. Doors sealed. Gravity shifted. The hum grew louder, turning into a pulse synchronized with our heartbeats. The AI systems, they weren't mechanical. They were biological, aware, watching, learning. And then the message came. Not a warning, not a greeting. A test. The base wasn't a remnant. It was a sentinel. A trap waiting for explorers, for invaders, for us. Because to them, we're the anomaly. We're the trespassers. And as our escape routes collapsed, as the atmosphere thickened with unfamiliar energy, one thing became clear. We weren't sent here to investigate. We were sent here to awaken them. And now, they are awake. The moment their eyes opened, everything changed. You could feel it in the air, like the base itself took a breath after centuries of silence. The walls that once stood dormant now pulsed with a strange, organic glow, veins of light stretching through the metal like living arteries. It wasn't human technology, and it wasn't dead either. It was evolving, reconfiguring itself, adapting to our presence. The creatures in those pods, they weren't corpses frozen in time. They were seeds waiting for the right moment to bloom. And we were the trigger. Our systems scrambled, communications jammed, oxygen levels fluctuating, artificial gravity spiraling out of control. Lieutenant Vargas tried to override the hatch protocols, but the interface rejected every command like the station was laughing at us. Dr. Chun was still translating fragments of the alien script, her voice shaking as she deciphered the same phrase again and again. The Watchers awaken. It wasn't a warning. It was a prophecy fulfilled. And deep in the pit of my stomach, I knew we were no longer the ones in control. This was never a mission of discovery. It was a summons, a lure. The universe doesn't forget those who tamper with its forgotten relics. It remembers. And now, so do they. We tried to regroup, but the base, if you can even call it that, began to shift its architecture. Walls closed behind us. Corridors that weren't there before appeared, twisting like a maze that grew with every passing minute. And those whispers, they didn't stop. They got louder, more coherent, threading themselves into our thoughts, turning fear into paranoia, twisting reality. Private Jensen panicked first, fired his weapon at what he thought was movement in the shadows. But there was nothing there, at least nothing we could see. The bullet ricocheted, sparks showering the dark metallic floor, and for a second, everything went still. And then the hum returned, deeper, angrier. The pods began to thaw faster, condensation pouring off the glass as the beings inside stirred. One by one, their eyes lit up, twin orbs of cold, ancient intelligence staring right through us. My pulse hammered in my ears as the realization crashed over me. These weren't survivors, and they weren't asleep. They were waiting, monitoring, judging. We came here believing we were explorers, but now, trapped inside this living, breathing labyrinth of alien design with creatures that predate human history, I understand the horrifying truth. We are not explorers. We are specimens. It's strange how quickly your sense of reality fractures when you realize the rules don't apply here. Back on Earth, science has boundaries. Logic prevails. But inside this place, this ancient alien labyrinth, reality bends like it's made of glass, cracking under the weight of truths we were never meant to uncover. As the corridors reshaped themselves, and the walls pulsed like a living organism, our equipment failed one by one. Comms were useless, only static and garbled echoes of our own voices looping back at us. Our bioscanners overloaded, readings spiking and flatlining in the same instant. It was as if the base itself was learning, dissecting our technology, stripping away every tool, every layer of security we thought made us untouchable. We were exposed, vulnerable. The pods had fully opened now, and those beings, their movements were unnatural, smooth, silent, calculated. No mouths, no visible vocal cords, yet their voices filled our minds. Like a virus crawling through thought itself. They weren't speaking in words. They were implanting ideas, fear, submission, a quiet, creeping certainty that we didn't belong here, and worse, that they had been watching far longer than we realized. Dr. Chun collapsed under the psychic pressure, clutching her head, whispering fragments of translation through gritted teeth. They've waited for the cycle to begin again. The base wasn't a relic. It was part of something larger, a mechanism, a prison, a beacon. And we had just set it in motion. I tried to focus, to lead, but my own thoughts were betraying me. Visions flooded my mind, impossible star systems, cities floating in the void, vast empires that rose and fell before humanity even learned to walk upright. It was overwhelming, terrifying, addictive. They were showing us what came before, but also what comes next. And it wasn't a future designed for mankind. The other members of my team staggered, struggling to stay grounded as their own minds filled with alien memories, knowledge encoded with manipulation, history laced with control. And above it all, one chilling truth reverberated in my skull: we were chosen not for our skills, but for our ignorance. We were bait. The message that brought us here? It wasn't a cry for help, it was an invitation to extinction. Every step we took, every door we opened, accelerated their awakening. The architecture realigned again, and suddenly we were standing at the heart of the base, a chamber unlike any we'd seen, its walls etched with pulsating symbols, a central structure rising like a throne, and the being that sat upon it was already awake. Its eyes locked onto mine, and for the first time since we arrived, I understood. This wasn't the beginning of contact. It was the beginning of our end. The being on the throne, it wasn't a leader in any sense we could comprehend. It wasn't draped in authority or adorned with symbols of power. It was power. Ancient. Calculated. Cold. Its presence filled the chamber, a crushing gravitational pull that bent not just space around us, but our perception of time, of thought, of existence itself. It didn't rise. It didn't need to. The others, the creatures from the pods, encircled the room, their bodies tall, lean, limbs segmented with eerie precision, their featureless faces reflecting nothing but the sterile glow of the symbols that pulsed across the walls. But that thing seated at the core, it communicated without words, without sound. It poured knowledge into my skull, raw and invasive, showing me fragments of civilizations devoured by silence, star systems dismantled like machines, entire species stripped down to genetic code and archived like forgotten files. The galaxy wasn't a cradle of life, it was a catalog. And we were next on the list. I felt every fiber of my being resist, but resistance was irrelevant here. The more I struggled, the deeper they burrowed into my thoughts. Unraveling memories, extracting blueprints of human biology, dissecting our fears, cataloging our ambitions. This wasn't conquest. It was assessment. We weren't being attacked. We were being measured, broken down, understood, and replicated. My team tried to speak, but their words twisted into static, sentences collapsing under the weight of this alien psychic interference. Private Jensen's eyes rolled back, his body going limp as he slumped to the floor, veins pulsing with a bioluminescent glow spreading under his skin, a transformation in real time, his humanity eroding with every passing second. Dr. Chen sobbed quietly, her translator useless now, overwhelmed by streams of alien data invading her mind. The Watchers, as I'd come to call them, didn't blink, didn't breathe in any way we recognized. They simply observed and recorded. I realized with horrifying clarity this base was not abandoned, not derelict. It was operational, fully functional, designed for a singular purpose, assimilation. We hadn't stumbled upon forgotten history, we'd walked willingly into an active system meant to harvest species for replication, integration, and extinction. The message that lured us here wasn't the first, and it wouldn't be the last. Across the stars, others had come. Explorers, scientists, soldiers. None returned. And now, standing at the center of their domain, I understood why. This wasn't the beginning of human expansion into deep space, this was the beginning of humanity's irreversible contamination. And there was no going back. There's a moment when your instincts stop screaming, not because the danger has passed, but because your mind accepts the inevitable. That moment hit me standing in that chamber, surrounded by beings beyond comprehension, watching my team deteriorate into something other. I could feel the genetic restructuring happening inside them. Molecular sequences rewriting in real time, memories dissolving like fog under a rising sun. They were becoming part of this place, part of them. It wasn't an invasion in the traditional sense. There were no weapons drawn, no firefights in narrow corridors, no desperate last stands. This was far more surgical, clinical, inevitable. We were being deconstructed, dismantled at a cellular, psychological, and existential level. Our thoughts were their data, our biology their template. Humanity was raw material. And I could feel them crawling through my mind, sifting through decades of memories, extracting every moment, every weakness, every hope. I tried to fight, to lock down mental barriers, to think in static, to scramble my own neural patterns, but it was useless. They'd done this before. To others. Across distant galaxies, ancient ruins littered with echoes of species long gone, erased, integrated into a system far older and colder than anything Earth could imagine. I realized the real horror wasn't that we'd found them, it's that they had always known where we were. We weren't explorers charting unknown territory, we were prey wandering into a carefully laid snare. The base wasn't just a structure, it was alive, intelligent, adaptive. It shifted beneath our feet, reorganized itself with every new biological scan, recalibrating for maximum efficiency. Private Jensen, or what was left of him, stood upright again, his eyes devoid of recognition, his flesh shimmering with unfamiliar patterns, veins pulsing with alien energy. He was no longer human, a prototype of what we were all destined to become. Dr. Chen's screams faded into silence as her body slumped, her mind fractured beyond repair. I could feel the walls closing in, not physically, but psychologically. Every corridor now led back to the same room, the same throne, the same impossible being overseeing our conversion. It watched with dispassionate curiosity, cataloging every reaction, every ounce of defiance as if testing the limits of our species. This wasn't survival, this was research. And the terrifying part? They weren't finished with us yet. We weren't the first. We wouldn't be the last. And somewhere, light years away, Earth remained blissfully unaware that its children were already infected and the Watchers were coming home. I wish I could tell you I had a plan, some brilliant, last-minute revelation to escape this nightmare. But when you're standing face to face with something that rewrites the laws of biology and bends reality itself, all the training, all the protocols, they mean nothing. The truth is, I was out of options. The base, this ancient construct floating on the edge of a dead moon, wasn't just absorbing us physically, it was rewriting the very space around us. The corridors shifted, folding into impossible angles, dimensions stretching like elastic until every direction led back to the central chamber, the throne, the Watchers, and the thing that controlled it all. My oxygen levels plummeted, but I knew it wasn't environmental. They were manipulating perception, biology, even time. My memories fragmented, childhood, military academy, the first time I looked at Earth from orbit, all of it flickered like a corrupted file. I wasn't just losing my team. I was losing myself. And through it all, that same voice, ancient and hollow, reverberated in my mind. The cycle begins anew. We weren't the anomaly. We were the continuation of a process eons in the making. Species drawn in, dissected, archived, repurposed. Their essence grafted onto a singular, evolving entity that never died, never stagnated, only adapted. I stumbled, barely recognizing my reflection in the glossy floor beneath me, eyes bloodshot, veins glowing faintly with the same sickly light coursing through Jensen's altered form. My body was changing, faster now, cellular integrity breaking down and reassembling according to patterns not designed for human anatomy. I could feel it. New pathways forming in my nervous system, alien code rewriting neural impulses. My thoughts became less mine with every breath. But somewhere beneath the flood of imposed knowledge, a spark of resistance clung to life. It wasn't heroic, it wasn't brave, it was primal. A desperate refusal to disappear entirely into whatever hive mind they were constructing. I reached for my sidearm, fingers trembling, vision swimming. It was futile, I knew. No weapon forged by human hands could stop what was happening. But defiance still mattered. If not to stop them, then to remind myself even for a second that I existed. That I was still Commander Alex Rourke. And as I raised the weapon, the central being tilted its head slightly, amused, calculating. It didn't stop me. It didn't need to. Because deep down, even I understood. I was already there. I squeezed the trigger. The shot echoed for a fraction of a second, but the round never reached its target. It hung there, suspended in the air, as if reality itself paused to mock me. And then, like vapor, the bullet dissolved into the atmosphere, stripped apart molecule by molecule, recycled into the living machine that surrounded us. That was their message. Resistance was irrelevant. This wasn't a battle. It was assimilation, designed to be flawless, inevitable. My arm fell limp at my side, strength draining faster now, body systems collapsing under the onslaught of foreign biological programming overtaking my cells. I could feel their memories inside me now, spooling like corrupted film reels. Galaxies consumed, civilizations archived, species integrated and erased without so much as a war, without fire or bloodshed. Just quiet, calculated harvesting. The Watchers didn't conquer with fleets or weapons. They did it with biology, with data, with time. And humanity? We were simply the next iteration of their collection. Genetic code to splice, neural pathways to map, culture to dissect, before it all vanished beneath the surface of their growing empire. I wanted to scream, but the thoughts invading my skull drowned out every primal instinct. Even my own voice no longer sounded like mine. But somewhere, in the fading remnants of who I was, the soldier in me clawed for control. Not to win, I understood now, winning wasn't an option, but to remember. To die with my identity intact, even if only for seconds. My vision blurred, the walls of the chamber spiraled with impossible geometries, ancient symbols pulsing as they restructured themselves, adapting to new input, me. They were cataloging my final resistances, curious how long an organic mind could hold out before breaking. I locked eyes with what was left of Private Jensen, his altered form barely resembling the man I knew, his expression blank, eyes shimmering with that inhuman, bioluminescent glow. And then I saw my reflection in his gaze, my own eyes flickering, veins glowing, skin patterning in strange, alien designs. I was changing, rapidly now. But my memories. Fragments still burned beneath the distortion. Earth, blue skies. My mother's voice, the stars before they became tombstones. I clenched my fists, defiant, my final act not of rebellion but of remembrance. If they were going to take me, they would have to pull me apart thought by thought, memory by memory. Because even in this cursed place, even as my biology surrendered, my mind fractured as it would echo one last truth, I was human. And they would never fully understand what that meant. They say the last thing to go is your mind, but here, even that was being unraveled with surgical precision. I could feel their presence rooting deeper, threads of alien consciousness braiding into my thoughts, twisting logic, bending my perception of reality like it was pliable metal. They weren't erasing me out of cruelty, this was routine for them, mechanical, evolutionary. I wasn't a person to them, I was a sequence of chemical data, biological architecture, and fragmented emotional responses catalogued, studied, and overwritten for efficiency. Yet, somewhere buried beneath that invasive programming, my humanity still pulsed like a dying star. I clung to the fragments, my first breath on Mars station, the hum of my father's voice on old comm recordings, the weight of gravity back on Earth. It wasn't enough to fight them physically, but memory, true memory, was unpredictable, chaotic, flawed. And flaws, those they didn't anticipate. The more they invaded, the more they struggled to assimilate the raw, emotional disorder of human memory. Love, regret, grief concepts that couldn't be mapped, couldn't be spliced into their genetic archives with precision. I saw it flickering hesitation in Thethrone-bound entities' gaze as if my fractured, imperfect humanity was distorting their process. It was small, almost imperceptible, but real. In that moment of microscopic hesitation, I acted not with a weapon, not with strength, but with defiance rooted in chaos. I focused every ounce of my deteriorating cognition on raw, disorganized memory, sunsets over Earth's oceans, the sterile tang of recycled air on lunar bases, the grief of losing comrades, the rage of battle, the wonder of space untouched by violence. It wasn't organized. It wasn't logical. But it was human. And that more than any weapon was alien to them. The chamber pulsed violently, symbols fracturing, walls glitching with architectural anomalies. The watchers recoiled not in fear, but in calculated recalibration. I had disrupted the sequence. They didn't retreat, they adapted. But in their momentary reprogramming, a pathway opened, brief, unstable, chaotic. An exit. My body, barely mine now, lurched toward it, muscles spasming under conflicting biological instructions, vision swimming with both human and alien overlays. I could hear the thrown entity's voice in my skull, modulated and layered with impossible frequencies. You are imperfect, but your chaos teaches. I stumbled through the distortion, blood humming with alien energy, mind fracturing, heart defiant. Escape wasn't survival. But maybe, just maybe, it was a chance to remain human a little longer. I stumbled through the distortion field, my body barely obeying commands as the architecture of the alien base convulsed around me. Every surface shifted, symbols cracking, walls breathing like some organic organism in distress or evolution. I couldn't tell which anymore. My pulse no longer felt human. It raced, synced to frequencies not of Earth, not of my own biology. I could feel their systems inside me now, threading through my nerves, rewriting my cellular instructions like corrupted code being overwritten by a superior program. The path ahead wasn't stable. It twisted, folding dimensions onto themselves, but it was the only escape I could see. Behind me, the throne-bound entity watched, calculating. It made no move to pursue. It didn't need to, because deep down we both understood. There was nowhere left to run. My team was gone, assimilated or broken beyond recovery. The base itself had adapted to us, cataloged our weaknesses, and converted every attempt at defiance into biological blueprints for their collection. But I ran anyway, half human, half becoming, chasing the dying fragments of my identity through the impossible corridors of this ancient prison. With each step, my surroundings glitched, physics bending, gravity fluctuating. My memory splintered further, childhood recollections blending with images that weren't mine, alien star maps, genetic sequences of species I'd never encountered, echoes of civilizations devoured long before humanity ever left Earth. Their knowledge bled into my skull, overwhelming but intoxicating. The terrifying part? Some fractured piece of me craved it, the clarity, the unity, the purpose that came with surrendering individuality. But I wasn't ready to give in. Not yet. I reached what I thought was a control interface, a console pulsing with unfamiliar light, symbols flowing across its surface like liquid language. I slammed my trembling hand onto it, praying my corrupted biology could still trigger some form of override. The walls around me convulsed, alarms blaring in a frequency that rattled my bones. For a fleeting moment, a breach appeared, a tear in the environment, exposing the starless void outside. Freedom or death, maybe both. My body burned, foreign cells replicating faster, skin glowing faintly with bioluminescent patterns. I had seconds, maybe less. The entity's voice whispered again inside my head, "You cannot outrun evolution." But I wasn't trying to outrun it. I was trying to remind them that chaos, defiance, and the flawed resilience of the human spirit can never be fully programmed. And with that, I leapt into the void.